Hello, and welcome to this episode of the Reset Podcast. I'm your host, Laura Munoz, CEO of the Cultural Communications Agency, D Flash. Each episode, I bring on a different business leader who's doing some game changing work. And this episode means the world to me because I finally get to interview my mentor, Chris Royer, who's the president of Consulting by CRC, an original Halstonette. And the reason why I'm such a badass businesswoman is because of this awesome woman. So I am super psyched to finally have her on the podcast. And so we're going to have a great conversation, hear her phenomenal story and so much more. Take a listen. Hi, Chris.
Hey, Laura. How are you? I'm so
Hi.
excited to be there.
I know it's taking a bit while. I'm great. I'm so psyched to have you on the show.
Wonderful.
So the way this always works is I always ask the same first question, and I think I know this answer, but I'm going to pretend like I don't. But Chris, what was your first job?
My very first job was when I was in school. I was in design school at Pratt, and I actually was employed by a company called De Beers Mines. It's the largest diamond company in the world. And they had wanted me to model as well as to style and to design jewelry for a contemporary young audience that would love diamonds. So it was perfect for me. Diamonds, of course, especially with De Beers. De Beers was the top of the whole diamond company world, you might say. Now, my second job was working with Halston.
We'll get to that. We'll get to that one.
Yes.
So I love how you started with diamonds, and then and by the way, I went to work for Halston. So
Right.
I know this story by heart, backwards, forwards, and sideways.
Yes.
But I would love for you to tell the story of how you ended up becoming an Halstonette, because there's been so much chatter about Halston recently with the amazing Netflix series starring Ewan McGregor. And the stories of the Halstonettes are just so rich and so unique. And like I said, I've known a story for about 20 years.
You sure do.
But there's so many folks who don't. So I would love for you to start at the beginning and how'd you even meet Halston?
I met Halston. Actually, I had gone to London and I did a small amount of modeling there, and with Models One, which was the boutique and the elitist model agency there, merely because I was visiting them and they promptly sent me out for jobs. So I was like, oh, great, money, So when I came back to the United States, I was with Wilhelmina Agency because my original project, or I should say the first modeling job I had, was really, I was discovered by Mademoiselle magazine. And Mademoiselle was sort of like the young, trendy magazine for young women in America. And they had featured me as Chris Royer Has Style. That was the headline. And there was a series of 4 pages describing that I go to Pratt Institute and that I'm in design, and I'm featured in as a talent with Mademoiselle. What happened was that Halston had seen the layout, and by chance I had just come back from London, and Wilhelmina said, "Okay, Halston wants to see you. I think the two of you are going to be a perfect match because you are exactly what he's looking for." So I went up to 68th Street and Madison Avenue. Now, at that time, as you well know, Laura, the designers were really not featured. The company, let's say Bill Blass, when he was in that position, he was originally with a company called Maurice Retner, and then they never knew that it was Bill Blass. Bill Blass, during that time period, ended up becoming Bill Blass. Now, that's the same thing with Halston. Halston became Halston Limited at that point, and that was the beginning company of his clothing. Prior to that, he was Halston at Bergdorf Goodman because he did millinery fabulous hats for Jackie Kennedy and for numerous celebrities. But with Halston Limited, located on 68th and Madison, that was his clothing. So when I got up to 68th Street, I went into this elevator, which opened up to this incredible third floor salon. It was considered the made to order salon where all the socialites and celebrities
And
would
ladies.
come. Exactly. And to begin with, the salon was all painted like this incredible creamy white or cream ivory, I should say, and it just glowed. There were ficus trees, and there was creamy ivory ultra suede couches. The floors were done in a bleached they bleached the floors so they looked like marble. The music was samba music, and it was very sexy and very sensual. And there were Rigo candles all over the place. Cypress, which was a very famous type of scent, which Jackie Kennedy used in her White House when she was living at the White House. But it's a beautiful fragrance. So as soon as you went in there, you fell into this amazing zone of luxury.
Mm-hmm.
So when I walked in, I saw this gorgeous man in a black turtleneck and black pants sitting on the couch. So I said, "Well, I'm Chris Royer." And he proceeded to say, "We know." And I'm going, "We do?" And he goes, "Yes. Now let's sit down and let's talk. You just came back from London. Let's talk about the fashions and let's talk about, the modeling and everything." And he was fabulous. We looked through all the clothes. We looked at the designs. The pieces, the designs fit me perfectly. And so we were talking and talking. And after a point, I thought, I assumed he was the assistant, so I thought I'd be meeting Halston fairly soon. So I said to him, I said, "Well, eventually I'll be meeting Halston because I gather I got the job." And he goes, "Mm-hmm." And so I said, "I would like to ask some questions." And he said, "Okay." And I said, "Well, how old is Halston?" And he's like, um, "Old enough." And he said, "Why?" I said, "Well, I'm just, coming into this, and it's like, I love to do the modeling, but I also have a design background. I'd love to be involved in the design staff, the creative staff with Halston, if that's possible. Uh, do you think he would object to that?" And he said, "No, that's doable." So I thought, great, this is wonderful. And so I said, "Well, I said, does he have a sense of humor?" And he said, "Yeah, yeah, he has a sense of humor." I said, "So if I decide to go more into the designing, would he object?" He goes, "Oh, yeah, that's doable." So the next question I said to him, I said, "I have another question." He goes, "Yes. Do you think, since we all get together and do so well and we get along so well, do you think possibly you could tell him that you and I can work together?" So he smiled and he said, "Yes, yes." Now, right after that, one of the assistants came in and said, "Halston, Jackie O is here for her fitting." So I looked around and I thought, well, maybe the designer was really behind the screen or watching or listening to us. And I turn around and there he is on the couch, laughing hysterically and like almost falling down on the floor with laughter. And I said, "You lied to me." And he goes, "No, I interviewed you and you got both jobs." And that's how we started.
Oh my gosh.
So he was constantly having different sort of moments, let's put it this way, of how we could do some fun things in between the fittings and the constant busy schedule of the designing, the press, the marketing and everything else. So it was a fabulous time.
Awesome. I love that story because it's like fresh out of a movie.
Well, well,
And
it also, what it does is it doesn't hurt to make sure that to speak to the right. If you have a good gut feeling, speak to that person.
exactly. I mean, there's so many lessons I learned from you that I've used throughout my career, and that one of those is like talk to everybody because you never know who's who.
Right.
If they
That's a
feel like they're
perfect
good ones,
example.
exactly. You just talk to the right dude. So it's what's always been so fascinating to me, throughout the years so we've known each other is that like you had this amazing bird's eye view into the brand that is Halston himself, but also the business of fashion, which I think is so rare. And it would be great to talk for you to share some of those like kind of really iconic moments where where it wasn't just about the clothing and the parties, but it was about the design and construction. Like you talked to me about the time that you guys came up with the idea for the sarong and like how that came to be.
Yeah, the sarong is considered one of his iconic designs. Lee Radziwill and numerous other celebrities, Marissa Berenson and Babe Paley's, Amanda Burton wore it, and who else? Barbara Walters became. They all wore it. It was considered the it dress. Uh, what it was the way that Halston used to design. He was very inspired by things that were day to day. When the sarong was created, we were actually on vacation on Fire Island, and we were in this beautiful house that had almost a Japanese one floor look, and it had sliding doors that opened onto the terrace and the pool, but they were mirrored. And Halston would like to, during his leisure time, just sit back, relax, have a glass of water, and he'd have his pen and his drawing pad and be constantly drawing and writing down ideas and everything else. I had gone into the pool and came out of the pool and sort of grabbed one of those big Fieldcrest bath towels. And he was watching me and he said, "No, wait a minute." And he pulled me to the door, which is mirrored, and he tied the actual bath towel in a certain way from the back to the front. And the way he tied it and draped it, he created sort of like two little bunny ears to hold it in place. We looked in the mirror and we saw a dress. And we are like going, "Oh my God, silk chamoose." Well, we thought it was silk chamoose because we're in the creative stage. When we came back to New York and showed it to the workroom, that's when the real work started because we had to take a 4-ply towel concept and make it into a dress. Now, the actual dress became iconic in the way the pattern was done. It was because it was cut on the bias, and it was something that was a spiral cut, which was very unique at that time because it gave the woman flexibility and a sensual look. But he also did what is called a built in bra in the top so that the little ties that you would see on the dress were easy to open and close. But the bra underneath it, which you did not see because of the gathering, was the thing that held it together. But it also lifted the woman's bust up and it gave her a very fabulous looking figure. So the concept was one thing, and then the reality of it, was iconic in both sides.
Awesome. And it's interesting because it's like he knew how to design for a woman in the real world. Even though it's like a lot of stuff was super expensive, making this luxury accessible for all women was a big thing for him.
Yes, he always felt he was very, in one way, avant-garde and revolutionary in taking the designs and perhaps making it more clean lined because he felt that the woman that wears it, if she's comfortable in it, she'll even look better looking because she'll feel better about herself and she knows that she conveys that relaxed, beautiful look about her. So he was very concerned making sure that the cloth, the fabrics were all very soft, sensual, and the colors really worked with the ladies' complexion, all ladies. He also made sure that he was one of the first at that point to create what is called underneath pajamas. They were called evening pajamas or day looks, elastic in the pants, so that if you gained or lost a little weight, you were still comfortable, which was unheard of. Most during that time,
Really?
yes, during that time it was fitted pants with, the zipper and the hooks and the eyes, which is great if you're always the same size, but most women are not. They fluctuate. So the idea of putting elastic and then covering it over with a beautiful blouse and then an obi belt gave the look an amazing sort of luxurious style to anyone.
And clearly foreshadowing, because now everyone's in, leisure wear because we're all home, and everyone's wearing jogger pants and cashmere pants and joggers at home. So like way ahead of its time in terms of making women feel good but still cute in comfortable clothing.
Well, we made the women's wear daily cover because Halston was the first to do really cashmere hoodies. He took the concept of doing what is called a more casual look, because when Elsa Peretti and myself used to come in for fittings during the day, it used to be very, very cold in there, so you didn't sweat. You had to keep everything looking very fresh. So we either had dress kimonos to wear in between fittings, but when we first came in during the day, we would wear sweatshirts and sweatpants and things like that, and the hoodies. And Halston go, here I have two big fancy models here, and what are they wearing? Sweat gear. So and Elsa would go, but Halston, it's so comfortable. So the idea got into his head, taking something every day. Well, let's make it different. So he took the concept of leisure wear, did the right cut and the right fabric in cashmere, and that's what became the made to order must have cashmere line for Halston. And everybody wore it. Everybody. It's like, he also did wonderful tops and bottoms, and he also did the cashmere dresses with the matching cardigans, which he tied it in a certain way. It gave it a different appeal. So it really made, a cashmere set much, much more modern and much more usable. And of course, the ultimate was the zip cardigan or the hoodie, which was fabulous.
Which,
And the poncho. We can't forget the
get the
poncho.
poncho. I was gonna say like you have to have
Right.
the poncho.
The iconic poncho that everybody wore.
And that's the thing that's really fascinating, and like for me has always been so fascinating that like not only was he way ahead of his time, but like every single thing he made I could wear today,
Exactly.
35 40 years later, because it's all about the fit. So like when you were working as part design part model, like what was that like, sort of figuring out how to get that fit right for the woman?
That's a great question. Part of being in understanding when he would drape a lot of the things he would drape in certain fabrics. For coats and things, he would drape in muslin. He would also drape in jerseys and things to get the right shape before it was cut into the final fabric. Sometimes he did cut in the final fabric, but he needed to do that, and he needed someone like myself who understood his draping and his cutting, but could also relate it to him in a design where this feels better. I can't move this way. When I sit down, the front goes down too far. We have to pull it up, or we have to adjust it. So it was invaluable for me to think both sides, not only the modeling side, but also knowing what he was designing and how the cut and the drape really had to be done in a very specific way. And it did take time. The more that you see Halston's clothing, they look very clean, lined. There's very few buttons. There's very few other sort of like zippers and things. And it's an easy way of putting on and taking off. But there's a way of how to tie it and how to drape it. And these things do become timeless because the patterns are so well thought out and it would take hours and days to perfect these things.
Wow. Oh,
Yeah,
there's so much.
yeah.
I think I'll ask one more household question before I get back to you. So you all went on a really a couple of really unique trips, and obviously I know this story because I've known you for 20 years.
Of course, of course.
But you all went to China
Yes.
uh, at a time when it was not like a thing designers did. And
Yeah.
I'd love for you to, kind of give like a little bit of a short version of it because it's an amazing in-depth story. But like, give everyone a little bit of tease about like what that was like.
It was 1980, and it was prior to that. In 1979, Halston was approached by a Japanese group that they were looking for a designer that could come to China. They were opening the gates to the world to identify that they are the ones that could produce clothing, and their facilities are open to all companies from all countries around the world. They chose Halston, and they went up and they had a meeting with Halston to see if he would be open to come bring his designs and to show, what he was about in America, and then also that the Chinese would also show, their facilities for possible manufacturing. So what Halston did, Halston also was an incredible marketing genius. He could visualize things in a way well in advance, and he could see things and how they could all be put together, but how they had to be very well organized and thought out. And he really did a magnificent job on this trip. We had a master licensee in Japan, and we were at that point doing a launch on women's Halston clothing for the Japanese woman, and that was scaled to the Japanese woman's body. And we were also launching at that point the beautiful bottles that Elsa Peretti made for Halston for both men and women. So we were going to do a launch in Japan. So he combined the trips, and we did a fabulous trip in Japan, fashion shows, and they did this amazing set in Japan, 20-foot high mirrors and things on the stage to show the glorious collections of Halston, and then also to promote and launch the fragrance as well as the women's clothing. Then from Japan, we moved to China. We flew over, and we were received by the government. We stayed in what was called the compound, which was approximately 40 years old. It was you almost thought that very gothic, like Batman, and was going to come in, because when you went to the airport, it was all like Gotham City. Nothing was changed at that point because it was brand new. The people all were dressed in Mao outfits, and both men and women, same looks. The women had at that point just developed the knowledge of how to do permed hair, and they all were on bicycles and they wore mirrored sunglasses. So it was a very different,
Well, different.
than Japan, to be honest with you. Very different. We did the show there, and it was done in a very old theater. And the press and everybody were very quiet and conservative because they weren't exuberant like the Americans. And after the show, some of the pieces were very sheer because the embroidery, which Naim Khan did for Halston, it was placed carefully so it revealed the body, but it didn't reveal anything private, you might say. When we had a discussion after the show, all the models and Halston sat down with the manufacturing people as well as the press people from China, and we ended up actually giving them things to touch, feel, and to try on, and it became an incredible, just amazing sort of like situation where it was like from very quiet and low keyed to this joyous, meeting of everybody looking and feeling, touching, and enjoying the glamour of what Halston was about.
And it's like it's also just a really amazing sort of cross cultural experience because you
Yeah.
all are just coming from like New York,
Yes.
and there is no internet, there is no Google, so
No.
so like all you can see is like the photos and what you see on television.
Exactly.
But now you're sitting next to each other and having this really amazing knowledge share.
Right. And also remember, because like at that point they were just opening, so everybody wore Mao outfits. We were lucky when we were the government supplied a car for us to drive in from the actual meetings and then back to the compound. There wasn't a hotel large enough to keep us all together, so we stayed in the compound, which was beautiful, but there were guards there. It was a very elaborate complex at that time in China. But
And you all had
uh,
that custom outfits, obviously, to kind of roll with the punches.
that's a great point. Halston designed for each girl. There was 9 of us plus 3 male models. The each one had their own look. You had your own little black suit, which had a skirt and then also coordinating pants. You had 2 silk tops, dolman cut, and then you had a couple of other underneath uh, 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 tops that would go with it. You had a beautiful little pajama set that you would wear for cocktails, which he used with the Chinese silk that was incredible from China. And then you had your cocktail dresses, which were all beautifully embroidered and sheer and glamorous and sparkly by Naim Khan's family. And then you had the glamorous evening dresses that were long and they were very spectacular. So each girl had their own specific colors, and each girl had a specifically designed wardrobe designed for them and their body shape. And then everything was packed up in Halston ultra suede luggage.
Oh, the pictures of these ensembles are so amazing.
Yeah, yeah,
Like,
yeah, really
but
are.
also,
Also, I forgot the
go for,
silk jacket and pants. Remember that with the red
of
top?
course,
That
yes,
was
I
the one
remember.
that we walked on the wall with because we were filmed and being recorded. That the famous wall pictures where all of us were in the group walking down in the wall, but we all had our silk jacket and pants and top to go with it. Yeah,
To be a fly on the wall, well, you guys just kind of strolling on the Great Wall of China in 1980, just sounds.
exactly, exactly. And it was very hot. China gets very, very hot in that time period in August, September. It goes up to 120. So it's hot. I think some of the people, because we every one of us we never went to China before, so we were very excited by taking pictures of everybody. And then if we had Polaroids, we would give it. There was one grandfather with his little grandson, and we took the picture and then we gave it to him so he could take a look at it and keep it. But it was amazing to photograph all of this, and we did see a lot of the Chinese, sites when they were, uncovering them.
Awesome. So, we started talking about clothes. So I have to ask you a Halston archive question. So
Absolutely.
you may have got a tiny collection that I might have seen once or twice.
I think you saw it a lot, a lot.
um,
Yeah, yeah. Sure.
what made you decide to like build this collection and also archive it? Uh, and because like I think if folks follow you on your Instagram, they've been seeing that you've been dropping a few pieces of here and there to give everyone
Right.
a little bit of flavor of it. But I have seen the whole thing.
You sure have. You sure have. Yeah, and it's like I think what happened was, in the very beginning when we did collections, the 2 models that were fitted for the collection at the end of the collection could choose 1 or 2 outfits to keep from the collection for themselves. And my first choice was the fairy princess dress, which is in the Versailles Hall of Records, in their website, as well as Robin Gibbon's book on the cover, and was called The Fairy Princess Dresses. It disappeared. We couldn't find it. And, this is not uncommon. A lot of times no one collected in the way that people think of it now, because there were garments that were being used and being borrowed and set up, and things would disappear or go on a shoot, and then something would happen. So because I couldn't get the piece that I wanted, Halston decided, where it was like, okay, you like to collect, so what you're going to do is you're going to create your own little archive, and you're going to also, including your mom's, and what you're going to do is that you're going to, when we go through the pieces, you pull it out and keep it. So that way, no one else can take it in the midst of a crazy sort of editorial shooting. That one will be removed, so you can preserve some of the pieces, and you wear them lightly, and then you donate them to the museum. What happened was that the museums at that point were not really accepting contemporary clothing. Today they're starting to, and they realize the importance of it, but that's why there's such a gap in a lot of the museums today on the looks of the 70s, because they don't have that much. And I think that now they're starting to regroup and realize how important and that time period was, especially over creative looks and designers and everything during that time. So I decided that once I started the process of it, I was lucky to be guided by Harold Coda and Richard Martin, who originally started at FIT. And then Harold and Richard were in charge of the Met, the Costume Institute. So I was advised by them, and then also another curator at FIT, in regards to taking care of my collection by photographing it. And I think you well know that, Laura, because the
I
process,
know what you mean.
right, 800 pictures later, the process of photographing the front, the back, the details, the uh, renting a mannequin that I could find that could have a small enough waist, because during that time period, those mannequins had tiny waists because the models had tiny waists. So that was definitely a journey to be able to produce and to document the clothes, because it's wonderful to have them hanging there, but the process of actually preserving them with archival paper and stuffing and everything, and then also photographing them so that you can see the details and everything for all types of purposes. Uh, it takes a lot of time and a lot of energy, and also money to be able to commit to this process. But I did, because I thought that the collection was so incredible. It had to be really recorded in the best way. And since I got the best advice from Harold Coda and Richard Martin, and then down when Andrew Bolton came, then I worked with Andrew. I've been working with Andrew as well. But it's very important to keep this history, preserved in the right way.
Because it's an encyclopedia of fashion. It really is. And,
Yeah.
having seen it, it's just one glorious. I want every single piece. But more importantly, it's a story of design that I don't think gets told. I think a lot of times, we forget about, we look at the glitz and the glamour. We don't look at the construction and like why this was made a certain way, and how no matter what your size, there was something for you.
Right.
And when we look at fast fashion right now and stuff that like you buy it on Tuesday, you wear it on Wednesday, it's in trash by Thursday.
Exactly.
Really beautifully well thought out made clothing for women is such a rarity today.
It is.
And looking back on the archive, the only way you can build for the future is to look back on what you see in the past. And so that's why I think that the archive is so beautiful, and that's why it's been featured in a lot of different exhibitions and more to come.
Yes. When I did the About Time exhibition with Andrew Bolton, that was obviously during COVID, so it was within this last year. it received tremendous amount of response because people saw Halston cashmeres, which they haven't seen in a long time. And it's something, it shows how timeless the look was. It was next to a Tom Ford because they would put two designers together with similar philosophy. And it really stood out because of the amazing cut. What Halston did was he perfected his cut so well and that it became timeless. Whoever put it on, he really understood how it would fall on the body and how it related to the body because he was always open minded about. He didn't care if you were very heavy, or you were middle, or you were skinny, or you were short. He didn't care. He found each one a challenge, and he looked at it in a way: how do I learn to make this woman look beautiful? And I think a lot of his caftans, you could see, can relate to so many people. One of his muses was Pat Ass, which Pat was a vendeuse or salesperson up at Halston for a while, and she was part of the Andy Warhol crowd. And he would put these gorgeous, sort of loose fitting caftans on Pat, and she became a celebrity in her own right. And she felt fabulous because she felt so good and pretty. And I think that, you could obviously take a similar look and put it on, let's say, any numerous Farrah Fawcett or any of the glamour girls, Marlo Thomas and Margot Hemingway, and they'd look incredible in it as well. But it was because Margot was very tall, and then you'd have other people like Liz Taylor, who was very tiny, Liza Minnelli, tiny, but he understood their body shapes because when he worked with Liza, that was probably one of the longest relationships he had, and he knew exactly what to do with Liza's, needs for to be on stage as well as off stage.
So cool. And I mean, there's so much here.
Yeah.
So you've been at Halston for a while. You've been a great design director as well as a model. And then you decide that you now want to be get into the beauty business. And so you move over to Revlon. What was that like?
Well, Revlon actually had acquired Halston Enterprises in '86. So they had taken over not only the what is called the ready to wear, the and made to order, the clothing side, and the licensing side. They had also acquired the Halston perfume, which was iconic and classic. And during that time, when Halston was in negotiations, uh, the company still had to continue. So I was pretty much put in charge of the Japanese master licensee, which was about 25 licensees. And my role was to work within the design team and work with our Japanese licensing partners to make sure everything looked exactly like Halston. So we kept the standard up. So whenever you saw the pieces and the designs, it always adhered to Halston colors, Halston uh, archival patterns and shapes, and also that it looked like Halston in the luxury level. Now the
Awesome.
now the perfume is different because I worked with the perfume people in developing what was called jewelry for that would go with the promotional jewelry and things that would go with the clothing as well as the fragrance. And a lot of the fragrance ads I worked with, we had taken Ron Perlman had made Cindy Crawford one of the spokesperson for the fragrance at that point, and they did these sensational ads with Cindy, and she had to do a launch tour. So I designed her suit and her jewelry to go for the launch tour, so she looked perfectly Halston.
Awesome. Super. And so to everyone's perfectly Halston, and now you're an executive.
Yes.
What makes you decide to take your career to a completely different side of the universe and go it on your own?
Well, I think prior to that, it was under Revlon. I co-created the Revlon license program, because since I knew so much about licensing, I thought, you have this fabulous thing called Revlon, and so much could be done for to create other products under Revlon, which obviously, their lips and their nails and their cosmetics, but they're also predominant in hair care, but they didn't have hair dryers. So when Halston was sold, it became Halston Borghese. They wanted me to go with them, and I thought, no, I think the bigger challenge would be to take on and to see if I could, because Revlon wanted me to stay with them because they liked a woman's point of view. Because a lot of times in these cosmetic companies, there's a lot of men that are
Mm-hmm.
overseeing this stuff, but Ron Perlman felt it was important to bring in key fashion women to give it more of the edge that what Revlon would be, should be at that time period. And so it was very successful. I was under Ultima too, and I think that we did the nakeds, the cosmetics under Andre Robinson. So it was really fabulous time. But once I got approval to develop the licensing, we became Revlon's licensing division. And under it, we created one of the top hair dryer lines in what, like if you went to CVS and you went to all the mass market, you would have your shampoos in the shampoo area, but that now you would have the Revlon hair dryers, and that would be the perfect match. And we did all sorts of promotions where we originally started with the black with the red logo, and then I ended up doing others which had more of what a pearlescent, so we'd call it like the Rolls Royce line or the Jaguar line, and because the motors in the actual hair dryers were super duper high because they were professional. So they were like really deluxe, but it was fabulous. And we did hair bows, we did glasses, we did jewelry, we did a lot of things, and we did nail care and everything that actually all went under the Revlon umbrella, because also hairbrushes. So it was all very well coordinated and put together very well.
I love how you like gloss over the fact that you basically created a multi-billion-dollar division of Revlon.
Well, well,
Just
it was a
gloss
learning
over
curve.
it.
It was definitely a learning curve. And then once I started, after a certain point, I felt that I needed to go back into fashion. And so I developed my own company, CRC Inc. And I worked with Betsy Johnson and Chantel Bacon in developing what you knew as the Johnson licensing program. I developed about 10 licensees for Betsy Johnson. One of them was the iconic Betsy Johnson bag with the studs in it. And that was amazing. It was like the it bag. Everybody had it. And if they didn't have it, they ran after you to find out what
To get it.
As you know, Laura, you were there.
I did witness this. It was quite strange. uh, but yeah, I mean, because one of the things that I often mention is that I have two MBAs. I have the MBA I got when I went to business school at night,
Right,
and then I have the MBA I got working for you for 3 years during the day.
right.
And because you were a woman business leader who had her own company, who was took no foolishness from anyone, but
No,
also knew how to be that really incredible executive. What do you think sort of helped that come to be for you?
I think it was the learning and the process of learning what Halston really had put together and insisted that if you follow the guidelines, you'll learn a great deal. Halston was basically my mentor and teacher on learning how to fulfill your vision. And if you had an idea that you could reach this, goal, you had to really work very very hard, but you had to be very very focused in understanding how you had to work with people to get to that goal, and don't assume it's going to be easy, and you have to keep going to find out all the ins and the outs and the secrets to make it super successful. but he was basically the one that really sort of like started me. Most people, obviously, you have, the encouragement from your parents and your family, but that's not the same thing as working with someone that innately he would love to be a mentor to everybody. But in my specific case, he was amazing. He really was just unbelievable. I'm very grateful for that.
Funny, I was going to say the same thing about you.
Oh,
So,
thank you. Thank you. Well, we have to
uh,
pass the legacy on, because
this
each
is true.
time it's like, the formula works as long
It
as you're
does.
willing to.
As long as you're open to it, the formula totally does work.
Exactly.
Looking back on all the amazing things that you've done and the awesome places you've gotten to see and be a part of, what do you think you'd tell 25-year-old Chris?
I think the most important thing is that, because there's so many opportunities out there, especially online, they're fortunate in that way, but they also have to be aware of that they should not be overwhelmed. They have to be very focused. And I think that they should pull from several things and only work on that and then try gradually the other things to put into your formula. Because if you accept too many concepts all at the same time, you might lose your focus point. And time goes very quickly, and I think that if you can sort of really stagger it and see how far you could go, the world is your oyster. It's unbelievable, especially now between cell phones and the internet. It's like you're global. You're not even just in an isolated place, and a lot of times you don't even have to travel. It's there, and you can communicate to China, India, California. It's all there for you. So I think it's a great opportunity for someone that's 25, but I think also it's like keep open. If you are working with companies, learn from them, because if there are mistakes to be made, it's not on your dollar. You can learn a great deal and understand how to move ahead. You're also in the space that you can see all the movement and everything.
It is disturbing how much I do quote you on a daily basis and I don't even realize it. because because I literally was having this conversation with someone an hour ago about, like, they were trying to convince me that they wanted to go work out on their own. And I was like, will you please go work for somebody?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
learn on their dime.
yeah,
Like, just
yeah,
shut up and go
yeah,
learn on their dime
yeah.
first, before, because the same advice you gave me, where it's like, okay, go work for somebody else now you've got your
Right,
MBA, and at
right.
some point I know you'll have your own business because
Oh,
you
that was
saw
a given.
something in me years ago when I was a wee munchkin at 20.
Right, right. You
uh,
you were the potential was there. It was just exploding, but we had to sort of keep you where it was like, okay, this is your potential. This is where you are. Now we've got to get it so that it matches, and you understand the timing. Because I think uh, one of the things is, I knew Elsa Peretti very well. And when Elsa used to design, she'd go, the process has to be very slow, slow. And she'd exaggerate with the slowness to achieve the perfect, piece, the perfect piece of jewelry. But that was her goal. And I think that's where you don't have to do it overnight. It's better to really understand and enjoy the process, because once you go through one process, you realize a lot of the others are very similar. And you had that potential, and you did. I knew where you were going to go, and bravo that you have this wonderful company. But in the back of my mind, I knew even when you were just, you know, a little 20-year-old, I knew the potential was in there. But you had the openness to understand that there were a lot of things to learn. That's a big difference.
Yeah, and I think that's something that, like, now I do the same thing for other munchkins who are 20 and 21, where it's just like
Right.
I can see it, but you got to be cool with learning new things, and also patience is a virtue. and that
Absolutely.
Rome was not built in a day, and there is no race to get everything done by the time you're 30 or
No,
35 or 40 for that matter.
right.
Like the journey is the good part about all of this.
It's,
Um,
it's also that once you start going through it, you'll be able to, do other things because you've gone through certain methods that work that will speed up more of the creative. Because I think when you're creative and when you have to think business, you sort of have to divide it, but then you have to put it back together, and it's hard. And especially like with what you're doing, it's all these visuals and communication and everything all together. But when it's all together, it looks incredible. But it takes the time, and it's
yes.
also when you're out there, you have to be aware of what the world is now, and then down the road, you might have an idea that it might go in that direction. But you also have to be flexible because things change. I mean, who would thought that COVID would have happened at this time? But it did. You know,
Exactly.
so that's where that flexibility in there is like very important, and understanding that. And really, open your eyes, your heart, your mind to everything out there, because it could be the littlest thing that can inspire you, and you go, who would have thought? But if you're open, you've got it.
Yeah, it's so true. It's just like, if the amount of things we've been able to do in the past year alone as a company came from being open to that, and also
Right.
when seeing those opportunities, going for it.
Right.
I quote you repeatedly whenever I say to folks, there are no dress rehearsals, so stay
No,
ready.
no, no.
So
That's right. I think it's also, especially as a woman, you have to be very focused. You have to be very, get your ducks lined up. That was one of Halston quote, because if you have your ducks lined up, you at least see the lay of the land. You see what to do. And if there's issues that you have to tweak, change, or totally get rid of, you're prepared for it. So this is a great time for women to start to evolve, to be recognized, to offer more opportunities to them than ever in the last century. Let's put it this way. So it's a very exciting time, but it's also something that has to be really applauded in one sense, but also pay attention to it. Pay attention. If you're a woman and you feel that you have certain goals in there, you can do it. You can do it.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And you can make this happen. Like, it's never been easier to make it happen. Like,
Right.
you guys were draping things on towels in Fire Island, and now I can do that same drawing on my iPhone using Facetune.
Exactly. It's
Like,
incredible.
yeah,
You know,
it's bananas.
it's like
You can do that.
you think that you can do, oh, I need a picture. You have your phone and you shoot it. It's there. And then you send it off. It's like, it's just amazing what can be done, which, especially in the modeling industry, has changed recording and doing photoshops and everything. Like, it's unbelievable. As well as movies. Movies will never be the same.
Oh no, you can shoot the
Uh,
entire thing on your iPhone and call it a day.
yeah, right.
Um,
Exactly. Yeah.
so last question for you.
Yeah.
Well, two questions, Justin. What
Yeah.
do you do for your self care? Like, what do you do to put Chris first?
Well, I think the most important thing is to because I take care of my mom. I think it's something that you have to keep a flexible agenda, and you have to keep everything so that you can adjust. And then if you have to switch out from one thing to another, it doesn't create stress. It just creates a more sort of flexible schedule, so you can continue doing everything you want to do during the day, but you're not frantic and hysterical about anything.
Words to live by Chris. And
And
then
that's
last
whether
question
it's
for
in
you.
an office or if it's personal. It does. It's
Doesn't
pretty much
matter.
the
Just
same.
gotta just say it.
Also, thanks to Laura, use Amazon.
It's like, well, I made a mistake of showing you the glories of Amazon
No,
Prime,
that
and
was
that
the most incredible. Oh my goodness. Living out in Westchester, it's like, wow, this is like, it's fabulous. It's like, and you were right. you will always love Amazon. Yeah,
It's like, yeah, I told you, I was like, don't worry about anything else,
you
just
were
use
right.
Amazon. Like,
Prime member.
um, and last but not least, do you have a give and or an ask of the audience?
I'm sorry.
Do you have a give or an ask of the audience? So that could be anything from here's a one good piece of advice, here's a really good book I recommend, here's a movie made by Halston you should watch, whatever you want. Like,
Okay.
uh, anything you
Uh,
want.
I think that remember that you should always think about uh, how you want to style yourself. And I think that being creative, everyone is creative on a certain level. Let the creative from inside come out. And I
That's
think
awesome.
that will that covers you all the time. Also look in the mirror. Just
Perfect.
in case.
Just in case. That's perfect and wonderful advice. Chris, I am so happy to have you on this podcast. Like
Same
I
here.
said, it's really funny that most people do not know that like that was my first job.
Yes,
Um, because I've talked about it, but I'm like, no, I work for a Halstonette. I'm like, what? And I'm like, yeah, like that was
yes,
my job. Like I learned how to write a really good email because Chris like
that's right.
dictated emails to me. So like when you see the really nice emails that I write,
Right,
tell you to go to hell. Like when
right.
it doesn't like say that, that's where I learned.
Well, there's
Um,
so many people to contact all at the same time that you had to go that way. You had to be very take the overall picture and also take in the smaller picture, and then you create your timeline and you got it there. You know.
yeah, you just have to do it. You just have to do it. But I would not be the boss lady as I'm referred to now had it not been for you. And
Oh, thank you.
I've been working with you forever, and that you're part of my family. I'm part of your family at this point. That
Absolutely.
like it's meant the world to me to learn from you, and I'm so honored and so thrilled to finally get you on this podcast to tell your story because it's such
Same
an
here.
awesome story. So thank you so much.
Oh, thank you.
One of the cool things that Chris has been doing has been giving you a little bit of a sneak peek into her archive collection of Halston. So
Yes.
I will be putting in the details in the show notes, so you can follow her on Instagram, and she will give you a little bit behind the curtain
Oh,
of the amazing Halston collection that she has. When I tell you, it is the most glorious thing you've ever seen. It is,
thank
but you'll
you.
be sure to check that out as well. But Chris, so great to have you on the show, and I adore you. So thank you so
Same
much.
here. Thank you, my love.
All the best. And that is our show.